Hello, folks. Been out and about. This morning when I woke up, I was reading about culture and religion. Uh, we have collectivism versus individualism, pastoralists versus people who farm, for example, and then you have rice farmers, which is a collective activity, versus wheat farmers. Herds people like the Maasai or the northern Finland people or whatever. North and South has a difference. It matters, as in terms of being a pastoralist. It matters if you're a desert pastoralist or like Irish or whatever, Greek. There are all these subtle differences, obviously. So culture is about what you do and think. And what you do and think isn't up to you before you were born. You were born into a cultural context and you learned to do and think in a certain way. And this affects so many things, including how genes react and so on. It's so complex, but a lot of people, Nisbet writes a lot about this stuff. Obviously, social science is problematic because if you're comparing collectivist sentiment or reasoning or cultural traits versus American individualism between Koreans and Americans, you'll generally be studying Koreans at an American university, so they're slightly influenced. They say that it takes a generation before people really shift. I spent time in cultures that were collectivist, more so than America, and because I spent a long time there and did things, did business and worked and so on, I was influenced by it for sure. How much, to what degree, I don't know. I'm still pretty much American and Irish through and through, but there you go. Who's to say exactly? Now let me think. I'm gonna go this way. So it is interesting that people who live in forests are animists and have many gods and spirits that they think about. Water rights are regulated by various gods in Bali and Indonesia. If you're a pastoralist and honor means something to you in the desert, you don't get many second chances, so you got your one God and so on. That kind of hierarchy. But anyway, we all take these things for granted, so we don't think about it much. And we don't realize how that influences violent behavior, all kinds of things in our society, in our culture, and beliefs and so on. We don't think about it. We just take it for granted. And if the world is becoming more and more Americanized and individualistic, and you can talk about that forever. I mean, you can look at so many different writers about this kind of cross-cultural thing, but yeah, you're gonna have certain values that just do not predict long-term viability of our species, and because of our tools of destruction and because of our attitudes. And like I said, you can't help it if you were born a Hatfield or a McCoy on the border of Virginia and Kentucky. And then you can't help it if you have to have a feud that lasts forever, because honor requires it. Well, there you go. I would have to say, quite a nice view. You can walk down to the beach there and fish. If you like. Yeah, so it's interesting to see how Buddhists, for example, deal with, quote unquote, the problem of evil. It's very different. Taoism, Buddhism. So when you think about it in terms of biblical terms, Jewish or Christian or even Islam, you know, there's a lot there that you have to take on board in a very bizarre, perverse way to explain away evil. But, you know, you can read about that debate in philosophy from a million sources. There's lots of rationale behind why God allows evil to happen. People know the mind of God. They know what he's thinking because they read a book and interpreted it. Bom dia. How are you? ¿Cómo estás? Hola, bom dia. So, yeah, the problem of evil, you can read all about it everywhere. But I was thinking that, you know, it's interesting because if you subscribe to a Western pastoralist, Middle Eastern originated religious culture, then evil's not such a big problem. God can deal with it, so why can't we? Why can't we present and act out the wrath of God because honor demands it or something else? Nothing should hold us back. We have our rights as individuals and duty bound by honor and so on. So, you know, it's easy to explain away evil, and then it's okay because at the end of the day, God's going to forgive you if you're a good Christian or a good Muslim, and you're doing it for good reasons according to how you interpret scripture or whatever. I'm trying to see if I can get over on that other path. This is all really nice. Down there, up there. Yeah, so look at that view. God, wow. It's nice to have a foreground in front of this expansive, wide-angle view of the Atlantic, which is heating up like crazy, don't you know? My backpack got stuck. So, yeah, God will forgive you because you did it for the right reasons, and you know what those reasons are. I feel more comfortable in these situations going uphill. What can I say? I ain't no spring chicken. Now, where does this go down to that road? If it does, I'm going down here. I'm getting bitten by horseflies. I don't like them. So it makes a lot of sense, you know, and then the way violence is justified in Buddhism, for example, you know, just the problem of evil, you know, how can we explain away? It's interesting looking cross-culturally at statistics of infant death, mothers dying in childbirth, just all kinds of things, you know, income, you know, just across cultures, how they vary so much. And it's not just that they're a particular kind of culture, it has to do with resources and economies and so all kinds of things, right? So yeah, there's different ways of justifying the horror of life, and it's fascinating to see how it's dealt with, what kind of mind goes into it, you know, a crusader going off to kill other monotheists from the same region where the religion came from, the same kind of background, as opposed to two samurai clans who are more or less culturally the same, but honor is a huge part of it. And then they can, you know, justify it because, fuck, my pedal hit the bottom. They can justify the killing because of honor, duty to the daimyo, and so on and so forth. So all of that problem of evil sorted out in very human ways, and all within cultural and biological context. Nothing fancy about it, nothing supernatural, but I think it helps a lot for people to believe that the spirits are on their side, or some things are just a mystery and you don't know what the spirits are going to do, or God is on your side, and if your child dies of leukemia, there was a reason, and you can rationalize it and feel good. This stuff is all washed out and whatnot. So it's an interesting thing to look at. So in other words, cross-culturally, as opposed to just taking everything you grew up with for granted. We live in a global world now, and probably doesn't hurt. You know, the guy didn't like, the Hawatat didn't like the other guy, Lawrence of Arabia.
I carried 23 great wounds, all got in battle. 75 men have I killed with my own hands in battle. I scatter, I burn my enemies' tents. I take away their flocks and herds. The Turks pay me a golden treasure, yet I am poor, because I am a river to my people.
And they have to fight over, you know, resources and whatnot. There's a limited amount of water, and you can shoot the guy if he steals from your well because honor demands it. The guy knows he could get killed, but takes the water anyway because he needs it. And now we're getting to a point where no tribe or nation state is going to be able to control all the resources it needs to allow its oligarchy, its plutocrats, its players, and their staff to own and control everything. There's going to be fierce competition for it. We see that in Ukraine. There are reasons besides this is a corrupt government that we've always known was corrupt, but we're going to call it the greatest democracy in Europe now. Why go to bat for Ukraine? There's always reasons, and there's always good business behind all these evil things that happen. They're disgusting, they're evil. but good reasons for it. So some of the Christians that love Donald Trump, they don't care about the law. He's their guy. God selected Donald Trump. So who cares what the stupid law says, you know? Except when they need the law, then they care. When someone cheats them or robs them, you went to Trump University and got ripped off, then maybe you need the law to get your money back. Yeah, so violence can be justified in millions of ways. And in northern Philippines and the rice terraces, they still feud over land and water, and they're shooting each other day in and day out. If you live in a certain village, you're in peril. And then it doesn't matter what you think about Zionism or Israel, Palestine, all that kind of stuff, West Bank, Gaza Strip. You know, these kinds of deadly violent feuds go back thousands of years. And they're just built into the cultures. And of course your side's going to blame the other side. Period. It's just common sense that the other guys are wrong. It's difficult to make peace because of that, and it's difficult to think in a broader way about people and life on earth and resources. We can be Christ-like for our own people. You know, in groups, out groups, both individualistic cultures and more communal-oriented collectivist cultures, you know, defend in group, but they do it in a different way with a slightly different attitude. So there's no way America's going to change, because America is a land of immigrants, period, except for Native Americans. And the current immigrant population is over 10%, over 12% right now today. So it's still a land of immigrants and immigration, period. And that's not illegal immigration, that's legal. So after a generation or so, they're going to be individualistic, they're going to talk about their accomplishments, they're going to see things in those terms. I did this, I did that. Well, you can read about these different cultural aspects of collectivist cultures versus individualistic, but America's the #1 individualistic culture in the world. People want to go there because they're unhappy where they are. Either they can't live well because of war or famine or something, or violence like in Honduras, or they're just pissed off and they're more sociopathic or more ambitious, more dissatisfied. They don't want to just fit in. So you can be a Japanese or Korean or Vietnamese and say, to hell with it, I'm going to the States, my kids are going to be individuals. All these TV shows where the immigrant family, the parents are at odds with their kids because they're much more individualistic. So, you know, you don't have to have brain scanners to figure this stuff out. You can infer it from observing the cultural norms and practices. So, you know, that's going to be the place. Uncle Sam's going to want to rule the world according to Uncle Sam's values, beliefs, what it does, and what it thinks. And the world, as long as America is super powerful, and it will be for a long time, has just got to deal with it. If you want to push back at Uncle Sam, he's going to try to kill you. So in this case, he wants to kill the bear. I think because without an enemy like Russia, America just can't think what it thinks and do what it wants to do. It needs that. So it's always going to have one. So they're kind of lining them up, you know. If it's not Russia, we need another big one to fight, and so let's make that the Chinese. Oh dear. So they're lining them up because they're going to need it. Have to justify the budget, and you have all these agencies like the NSA and CIA and Pentagon. They need to justify their budgets. They have to. So they need a big enemy, you know, and you have to be able to manufacture fear and paranoia and the individualistic culture. Not hard to do. And that's also how they govern the republic. You know, othering and scapegoating. It's the only way Americans know how to live. You pick a side, the other side's wrong, and you feud with them. That's the way they know how to live. They don't know any other way. So there's always going to be systemic racism to a certain degree. I'm not saying it's systemic through and through, or even defining that for you, but there are elements of the structure and the system that kind of make things that way. You can just say culture, what people do and what people think. And so they're going to go at each other. They're going to the immigrants' fault, that 12% of people who immigrated, or it's illegal immigrants, or it's some ethnic group, or it's woke people, or conservatives, right-wing Christians, whatever. And people are going to line up, choose sides, and go at each other. And then it makes total sense that America's foreign policy is like that. We have to have 800, 900 bases around the world and hundreds of thousands of personnel. You can't even compare it. So, yeah, you can walk down to a beach there. I don't think they're going to the Capella in their bathing suits. Or maybe they're just taking a walk from the beach down below. So, they have to have that because they have to protect those values. They also believe, a lot of people, that the Constitution is written by God, you know, saints. Can't be messed with, reinterpreted, updated in any way. So it's quite easy. You don't have to worry about evil. There are good reasons for evil. God knows why it exists, so don't worry about it. I know what God thinks, but I don't know why God wanted my son to die of leukemia. I have no idea. But other things, I do know what God thinks. God wants my people to win and your people to lose. So it's human, all too human. It's all just anthropomorphic, you know. The spirituality, the spirits, the forest spirits and gods, or the way of life, the Tao Te Ching, or samsara, whatever you want to think about, salvation. People come up to you, Buddhists, and say, "What's wrong with you? You're not enlightened yet." you fucking weirdo. Nah, they don't really do that. Ooh, that's nice. It's really nice. So, yeah, and if you want your culture to be a little bit far out ahead, you can reinterpret the Bible and come up with a new way to look at it, and then call yourself Lutherans and say all the Catholics are heretics. It's as easy as that. So yeah, there is no problem of evil. There's just human beings, and human beings are violent people. They just are. And any idea about how to deal with the world is going to have to include what we do about violence, because violence is a part of it. So some cultures that have more equality, gender equality and so on, are less violent. That's just the way it is. People get pissed off just like chimpanzees when they feel things aren't fair. They get angry. And then in some cultures, if you don't take the law into your own hands and do something about that, then don't come home, because you're not a real man. In the Civil War in the United States, people would say, come back in a coffin, but not as a coward. And I think people still think that way. Obviously, a lot of people think that, Ukrainians aren't dying in this war. That somehow they all survive, and billions and billions of Russians being killed. But one thing you can't say is that Russian and Ukrainian soldiers are cowards. They're dying for some reason, and it's not just because they're prisoners and coerced, or they're taken off the streets of Kyiv and put in the army. They believe in these things, and they're willing to die for it. I don't know if those guys are walking down there. Just walking back over to the other beach. Pretty nice.